Push the button. There we are.
I did. Here we are. I did push the button, and we are live now. And of course, my dogs just started to bark and bark and bark again. So there you go, Dr. Irene. How are you today?
I'm awesome. I have a feeling my internet's a little slow. So I'm just trying to see what I can do to make it better. All right. It is what it is.
We're like a Japanese, Godzilla movie right now. So what happens is this. Hi, Dr. Irene. How is it going today? So what are we talking about today, Dr. Irene?
Well, we had fun on Wednesday, talking about well, we didn't have fun talking about what our discussion was on Wednesday. We were talking about how people are really, really stressed out, overwhelmed, overworked, over everything. Let's face it. Just they're over it. and and because I'm a superhero geek, and I'm brave enough to admit it. We were talking about that stress can be like your kryptonite that just sucks the life right out of you.
We were talking about two things. We discussed stress can be your kryptonite on Wednesday. We're going to discuss today how stress can be your superpower, your
Power.
power of super,
Okay, give us the power. Come on, Dr. Dan. I know
your
you've been
uber
working out.
power.
Give us the superpower.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe before the end of the thing, I'll do a little flex down. But um, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We have I'm not as buff as our partner, Dr. Eric Smith.
Oh, Dr.
So,
Eric, if you're watching, you rock.
all right, he
Can't
did
wait to see
say
you
that
in your Captain America outfit.
he did say that I am getting there, but we'll see. I'm 50 years older than he is, so I don't know. We'll see.
50 years older than he is.
I'm 50 years older than everybody, Dr. Irene, at the very least, to really be
You
honest
look
with you. So,
really, really great for 100-year-old guy. I'm just going to say.
yes, I do. How's that sound? All right, so let's talk about stress as your superpower. What does that mean, and how do we get there with that? So in society today, a lot of people are stressed, financial stress, just stress of there you go, stress of just stress of life, stress it's just a lot of stress right now, and so it's very timely to talk about stress. What does it mean that stress can be your superpower? You're the expert in this. I look at it from a functional medicine aspect. You look at it from that mental, emotional thingy going on there. So tell me, what is that?
So people are like, what do you mean that stress can be your superpower, right?
Right.
Like, because we think of stress as being negative. Hey, Jonathan, I can't type back, but long time, and so happy to see you. We're talking superpowers, and I know, Jonathan, that you have your superpower. So love it, love it, love it. Neurodivergence. That is Jonathan's superpower. Fun fact: in the Percy Jackson movies, or books, where they're all the demigods have ADHD and dyslexia because it's how they can instinctively read Greek and have their super fast reflexes. So there you go. You see, there's something to be said about those superpowers. So and speaking of which, it's how you view it. Jonathan, who's watching right now, views ADHD, dyslexia, and those that other people consider illnesses to be superpowers, right? It's our genius. Really, it's what can give you the edge. And it's the same thing with stress, that stress, even the father of stress, Dr. Hans Selye said, and I'm going to paraphrase him, that, it's kind of like Shakespeare, nothing is good nor bad except thinking makes it so.
Mhm.
Well, stress, whether it impacts you negatively or positively, first and foremost depends on how you view it and how you view the situation. So one of the things that I say is, and Hans Selye said this, that his question in his old-fashioned way of speaking, this was 80 years ago, said, why is it that two men sitting working at the same bench doing the same work, one will get sick and one won't? Right? That was his way, because at that time the germ theory said that if you're exposed to a virus, everybody's going to get sick, everybody's going to die, kind of thing. And we know that's not the case, whether you're talking for your immune system, and that plays in for stress, because stress depresses the immune system, or can depress the immune system. And so my example is, and I know you can relate to this, Dr. Dan, because you're busy, you're happening, and yeah, Jonathan, you can spot the energy instantly. Yeah, dyslexic thinking. The We'll take you as an example, Dr. Dan. You've got it all going on. You got, like, what, 4 practices. You've got a virtual online telehealth, telemedicine going on, right? You're just like go, 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 right? You probably put in 2 full-time jobs worth of work a week, right? 80 hours a week, 60, 80 hours a week. You're doing a lot, right? What's the difference between you and some other guy who is, he has this full-time job, and then, maybe he snarfs down some food, and then he goes and works a part-time gig, like an evening job, a side gig, and he comes home exhausted. And right, like, you get the picture, right? You're both working the same amount of time, but perhaps you are like, you're thriving, you're loving it, you're going, you're just like, in fact, if you weren't, you'd feel like something was wrong, right? Whereas the other guy's just like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted, I just can't take this anymore. It's just like, I have to do this, I have to do this. Right? So
Well, this goes back to what we're saying. I'm using the stress as a superpower, as opposed
exactly.
to as opposed to others. We're always going to be in stressful situations throughout our life. I mean, there's nothing, you know, in life that doesn't have stress to it. My son is going through, a startling metamorphosis right now between high school and hockey, and he's coming out the other side, and he's going to thrive on stress, and we're going to be working with him. And and I think what Dr. Selye was saying is that it's in part it's a perception of what that stress is. I sit here and I think of a meme that I saw, and there's two brothers, they're twins, and one is successful, the other one is living on the streets. And it's, and they said, well, why are you here? Why are you here? And they both say, because my father was an alcoholic. So it's what you do with the stress and the tools
Yeah.
that you have that you can deal with stress. When you're growing up, life is easy. You get to high school, it gets a little bit more difficult. Then you get to college, it gets a lot more difficult. Then you get your first job. It just breaks loose at that point in time. And then you go on in life, you get married, you have children. Now you got different responsibilities, and it could be stressful. What are the tools? What are the strategies? What are the tips that you need to have in order to be successful and thriving on that stress that the daily living has? I mean, growing up, I saw uncles open up businesses. They closed them down. They weren't doing well. They opened up another business. So to me, if you're looking at it from an entrepreneurship, what I learned is that if a business goes down, if it fails, you open up another one. Maybe it was in the wrong area. Maybe it was on the wrong street growing up in the city area. Maybe it was just in the wrong part of town. Maybe they didn't like the services that you had, right? Maybe it was on the corner and it should have been in the middle of the street, whatever. And so to me, it wasn't a big deal. So I learned strategies watching my family open and close businesses, whether it was a bar, it was a candy store. I don't know if you know what a candy store is. Well, it does
I
sell
think.
candy, but there's a pool table there. There's pinball
Oh, that's a
machines
different type of
there.
candy store.
That's what we call the corner candy store. We had one on a couple of blocks away from me, north, south, east, and west. My uncles had one. So some of them they just closed down. They closed down because it just went out of business. They weren't generating business. So the strategies I learned were, okay, close it and you open up another one. So it wasn't that negative connotation. So what we're going to do is we want to give you strategies for success, because as you go through life, you're gonna get that curveball, right? So if you lean too much into the curveball, Dr. Irene, you're off balance, right? And you're gonna swing way too soon. You're gonna swing way too soon. If you sit back a little bit on that curveball and you turn your shoulders in just a little bit and you put your head down just a tad and you just start swinging, you're going to hit it right on the sweet spot and you're going to knock it out of the park. Oh, I teach boys and girls how to
Spoken
hit
like a true
that
baseball
curveball.
player.
Yeah. So when you see the seams, if you can see the seams, and if you can see life, that's the great metaphor. If you can see the seams, the way that they're turning, it's a curveball coming out of the pitcher's hand. So you can lean back a little bit on that hind leg, and you turn and you do all those things. We want to give you the strategies and the tools for success so that you can hit that curveball. And it's not a big deal because it's just part of life. What happens if your son or your daughter comes home and they're failing a subject in school? You can yell and scream. Sometimes that happens. We're all human. Or you could teach them. Everybody's back at school right now. It's like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. Tests are coming up already, right? The kids are studying. They're looking at their notes. They're online. They got all this stuff going on. Kids are back at school. What happens if somebody comes home and they say, I'm failing? You want to teach not only yourself, but you want to teach your children, wow, how to deal with stress and make it their superpower, right? So holidays are coming up. That's stressful. New Year's coming up. That's stressful. You hear all these things that are happening in the world today. It could be stressful. Or you can hit that curveball. You can figure it out. You can see that seam. It's turning a certain way and you want to whack it out of the park. I will tell you, it's much better to whack it out of the park than it is to swing and strike out. I can tell you that with 100% confidence and reliability.
And the
So
most important thing is that you need to swing and strike out probably a few times
that's okay too.
before you get to the point where you knock it out of the park.
That's right. And that is another great point. So for all of the new students, the parents that are out there, let's say the children, say your child comes home and they're failing, I don't know, whatever it is, sometimes you got to get up at bat. Again, I go back to my family, right? They opened the business. They took the shot, right? And if it wasn't working, they got to the point where if it wasn't working, they would just close it down. They knew they had that knowledge of when to get rid of it and go open up another business. Maybe the candy stores ran its course. Maybe they were going to put up a pool hall, which they did in fact do. So, or maybe they were going to put up another bar, which was good for me because I took care of the money in the bars back in those days. I would go to bar. Anyway, but that is the great analogy. And sometimes you need to fail fast forward. And I struggle with that, Dr. Irene. How could you fail? Right? How could you fail? I got burnt out over that. And I'm talking in high school. I was burnt out. I remember senior year, I was just burnt out. It was very tough to study for exams. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was working out a lot because I was athletic when I was in high school and going into college, but I was burnt. I was burnt. It was like I needed a vacay. Just go to the Jersey Shore, go to Seaside Heights for a couple of weeks. That'll take care of everything. Because as we were told growing up, the ocean cures everything.
Mm.
So sometimes you need to fall flat on your face, and that's okay, because you're going to get up a little bloody, you're going to get up a little muddy, and then you can start figuring it out. And the tools that we're going to give you will help you figure this out. So fail fast, fail fast forward. Go
Failure is
for it.
necessary for success.
That's right.
Right.
Growing up in the 70s and 60s, wow, I'm old. It was you didn't fail, and coming from an immigrant family,
And the 30s and the 40s, because he's like 100 years old.
The teens and the 20s, the roaring 20s or something.
Yes,
I don't know
he was growing up in the roaring 20s.
Yes, that was it. So anyway, I think everybody was in a different country, living in a different country at that time. I don't think anybody was here yet. Anyway, anywho, so it's okay to fail. Get the strategy, get the tools, teach them to your kids so they could teach them to their kids, right? Each generation is better than the next. Yeah. Teach them. Teach your children well. Didn't Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young sing that? CSNY.
Yes, they did.
Right? Teach your children well.
Yeah.
Teach them well. That's a great why. So listen, timely. People are going back to school. Timely, a lot of stress in the world, financial stress. It's okay. What happens if you lose your job and you had nothing to do with it? The company closed down. What are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? You have to have the strategies for success.
And we've been talking about the most important one, which is your perception. And Jonathan, thank you. He's on LinkedIn, and we are broadcasting to LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Jonathan, thank you for the TED Talk link. That'll be in the comments for everybody to see. So it is, number one, it's viewing stress as your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And as Jonathan said, there's a TED Talk by Kelly McGonigal on that topic. I prefer to say, because I'm a superhero geek, view stress as your superpower. And it starts with that perception, right? That if you feel that you have no choice, that life is being done to you, that you're powerless, then guess what? That's when stress is going to smack you down, and it's going to cause the damage. If you choose to view it as your superpower, like Dr. Dan does, and use that rev to just like a super octane fuel to power through, and understand that failure is needed, it's necessary, then you're not afraid to fail. So you're not going to put the brakes on when it comes to taking that leap of faith. Maybe that there are people out there who are staying in dead end jobs, or jobs they hate, thinking they're, that they need it for security, versus doing like Dr. Dan is talking about. And that is creating your own security, understanding that you're going to be fine no matter what.
A friend of mine tells a story, Dr. Irene, of somebody who has a job, and they had a side hustle as a photographer, and they started to do children's parties and things of that nature. And as they grew, they gained momentum. They now the person who's listening knows I'm talking about them, because I used some words. It's great. So anyway, they gained momentum, and their love for the photography started to grow. It became non-negotiable for them to do it. And now they have a big, huge, photography business, and he's his own. He's his own boss, and there's struggles with that. But again, how do you look at it? And like Jonathan just said, perception versus purpose, right? And so
Hmm.
you perceive the stress. Is it something that could destroy you, as we discussed? Is it your kryptonite or is it your superpower? I
Right.
choose to make it my superpower. I choose to make it my superpower. I will tell you, making it your superpower and having the strategies and tools that we could show you to do that is much better because it affects your health, your wealth, your relationships, your friendships with people, your relationship with yourself, your self care. It affects everything, and either it's going to be adverse or it's going to be positive, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is another way that stress can be your superpower without you even thinking about it. We've been talking about, you could say, mindset, which is very, very important. And it goes even deeper. Next time, I think we need to talk about how stress is your superpower, just like you are built to be a superhero physically, even. Right. So that's what I think we should talk about next time.
We could do that. So, Dr. Irene, Fun Friday.
Fun Fact Friday.
Fun Fact Friday. FQ, baby. It's all
Yep.
good. So, Dr. Irene, as always, very lovely to see you.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. Lovely to see you too.
Lovely to see you too, Dr. Irene.
Everybody have a great weekend. And, every time, think about your words. This is the final thing I'm going to leave you with. Thanks, Jonathan, for hanging around all so long. I know you got to go to your next meeting. Think about this. The next time you hear yourself say, I have to do this, I need to do this, and I'm like really slowing down. I see that. And that I have, that, or I can't do that. That's impossible. Your words have power. So change it to I choose to, I get to, or I am doing this. Like,
I
take
will. I
back your
want
power.
to. I
I
will.
will. If you can't get yourself to the point of I want to, like, think little things like you're telling your unconscious mind that you have no control if you say, I have to go to the grocery store, right? Because I have to says you're like a puppet on a string, right? Versus switch it around and say just simply like I'm choosing to, because there's so many people in the world that don't have the ability to go to a grocery store or have the money to buy food for their kids and their family, right?
Ooh,
So
ooh,
change things
ooh,
around. Yes,
ooh,
Dr. Dan.
ooh. That was from Welcome Back, Kotter Horseshack.
Oh,
Ooh,
oh,
ooh,
oh.
ooh, ooh. So,
Okay.
so I have a great idea for everybody listening in when we come back on Magnificent Monday.
Magnificent Monday.
All right, M squared. Look at what you do and how you look at stress, and you can put it in the comment section. Or if you failed over the weekend, what did you do and how did you overcome it? What was the steps that you took? Be a little
Absolutely.
vulnerable here, right? And I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to hockey tournament right now. Let's see how I act as a dad, and let's see how my son acts. So, it could be something different, right, with that. So, and if you've had a success or a failure when it comes to this, let us know. Let us know. More to come because we're very excited about a program that's coming up. So stay tuned.
Well,
Dr.
and the other
Irene,
thing is that if you're going through challenges, setbacks, understand you're not alone, that you have the, you know, all elite performers. Dr. Dan and I work with elite performers, in all walks of life, athletes, C-suite, celebrities, even,
what's
right?
the
They
C-suite?
all have setbacks. We all have setbacks. So if you're having challenges and you're looking for a way forward, DM us or join our new free community that we created for this very reason.
It's right
It's
there on the banner. You see it? It's banner. It's
it's
going right
supportive,
across.
and it's DrIrene.life/free community, all one word. Join our free community, and there you will have access to us, to the world-class faculty of the Stress Success Shift Institute, co-mentoring, and just that supportive accountability to help lift you up so that we are all part of the tide that raises all ships. So
Awesome.
until Monday, reach out if you need.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll talk then. Take care.
Bye.